Hi, I'm Dee from Pixel Quilts, and I have been asked a few questions about piecing pixel quilts, so I thought the easiest way to answer those questions was just to jump on and do a quick video. So when you go on my website pixelquilts.com and you download your pattern, so you create your own pattern by uploading an image, your pattern will be broken down into 108 blocks. Before you ever order your fabric, and your patterns will come with the fabric shade you need and yardage of each. But the thing you need to decide before you ever even order your fabric is how you're going to piece them. There are two ways of piecing them. One I've named group cutting, which is where light colours are blocked, and then so you will cut out less pieces, but you really have to think about it when you're putting every block together, because you're going to have to figure out how everything goes together perfectly. So that's the group cutting. The other type of cutting you can do is cutting every pixel. And so this, I highly recommend you get some kind of interfacing. If you're using my medium quilts, the only interfacing that does that size is a company called Quilt Smart. So you need to look for their pixel grid interfacing. So on this, you will cut every single pixel, and then you would put it onto the interfacing and press in place, and then you're able to sew in rows. You need to know your preferential way of making the quilt, because how much fabric you need for each shade will really be based on which way you're piecing it. If you think you're going to need a lot more fabric for cutting every piece than you would do for the group cutting. So that's something you really need to think about in advance. The other question I get asked a lot is, there is a medium-sized quilt which is a 72 by 54 inch, and there's a large size quilt which is a 92 by 74 inch. Is there a smaller quilt? And the answer to that is right now no, because the size of pixel you'd have to go down to in order to get a wall hanging or a baby size quilt would be a 1 inch cut, which would end up at ½ an inch, which is quite unmanageable. But there is a way around it if you're wanting to do that now. It will be something I add to the website eventually, but right now it's not available. If you wanted to go ahead and create your own pattern and purchase the pattern, then the fabric yardage to buy, basically the only way I would suggest doing a 1 inch pixel quilt is with 1 inch interfacing. So nothing is worked out at the moment. So the fabric yardage you'd have to buy hasn't been worked out for you, but if you're wanting to do it, that is the only way you could kind of get around it at the moment. Instead of getting the 1.25 inch or the 1.5 inch, you could buy 1 inch interfacing and then create your quilt with that, and that will make baby quilt size or wall hanging size. The other thing I will say on the pattern, and this is one I've just used, hence why it's all scribbled on, is when you're following the group cutting, you have to cut out all of these sizes. If you are just following the pixel, cutting each pixel, then you just follow the bold number at the bottom for each shade of fabric on your pattern. So I have actually made a baby quilt sized with 1 inch blocks, starting at 1 inch blocks, and it was not a lovely experience, which is why I've kind of put off adding that to my website. So right now it's not easy and it's not accessible on there. This is just a way that you can, if you're wanting to do a baby quilt or a wall hanging size at the moment, this is just a way that you can go ahead, buy the 1 inch grid and use 1 inch squares, and you will end up with a baby quilt or wall hanging size. But if anyone tries it, I've actually got a tester testing one at the moment, so I will report back and let you know how that goes.